Hi, I'm Bob Dixon. Welcome to the Leader's Edge Hot Takes edition of the Five Eagles Insight Podcast. For over 3 decades, I served in the military as an engineer and as a strategist, and I learned a few things about leadership. We know that it goes beyond theory. It's about real-world application. So in this series, sponsored by Five Eagles Leadership, we feature industry leaders and share their leadership journeys with you. My mission's simple. It's to help you become the best leader you can be. Now, if that sounds like something you're interested in, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. If you'd like to be considered as a guest in upcoming episodes, please go to 5eaglesleadership.com/interview and apply today. Now, let's get started.
Welcome back to the Leader's Edge podcast. I'm Marisa McClure, and joining me today is Ali Mahvan from Orlando, Florida. Ali is the founder and CEO of TerraSynth. Welcome, Ali.
Marisa, how are you? It's good to see you.
Yeah, good to meet you. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive right into some questions. To get us started, I would love to hear an overview of your business, what you do, and kind of a second part question, why you got into it.
Sure. TerraSynth is an artificial intelligence, data analysis, and visualization company. We're based in Orlando, Florida. We primarily service the Department of Defense, Air Force, Navy, Naval Air Warfare, our typical DoD customers, and then our commercial customers are typically universities like the University of Central Florida, where we focus on innovative research efforts and technology. And I got into that. That's a lot. How I got into it is a much longer story. It's a synergy of different passions and interests and ideas, and where all those things intersected kind of led me down this path. And that tends to be the case with any big projects I've noticed over time.
Yeah, it's great when you're able to find something that you can do to make a living, but that you also have a passion for and have an interest in kind of developing that. So that's great to find that intersection. It's hard sometimes to find that.
All the value is created where you bridge the gaps, right? Because you're able to bring efficiency and innovation from a different perspective or a different industry to a new distribution channel. So all of a sudden you just create all this business that wasn't there before.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. So what would you say is the biggest problem that you see in your industry, and how are you solving that for yourself or for your clients?
Speed of innovation is definitely the biggest problem in the DoD. I know you're a former naval officer yourself.
I
right?
am.
So modernization is something that I think the Department of Defense has been drumming for at least a century, right? The last 100 years we've focused on modernization. Technology moves a lot faster than our ability to acquire it. So the Department of Defense spends a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of resources doing research and working on innovative technologies, but I would say 80 to 90% of them never see the light of day. And that is because the speed of innovation outpaces the speed of acquisitions all the time. And I think it's particularly prominent in the defense industry, where there's a lot more layers because it's taxpayer money. There's a lot more layers. It's a lot more bureaucratic as to how things get approved.
I have definitely experienced that firsthand, and it not, like you pointed out, not necessarily a ding on Department of Defense, but there are a lot of protections and processes that have to be followed because they're spending taxpayer money. So, but it's a huge bureaucracy. It's a very challenging process to get through the contracting and so I definitely understand why that would be a challenge, because like you said, technology is moving so fast, and it's hard for probably most industries to keep up, but especially one that's as large and complex as DoD.
Yeah. Well, even even their prototyping, right? The fastest moving contracts that they have to get to a prototype in a TRL level 6, which is training readiness level 6. It means we have a usable, workable prototype that we can try out and test it and see if it really meets our needs. It takes 24 months to get to a TRL level 6. So
Wow.
at bare minimum, you're 2 years behind the market, right? Which is,
Right.
by the time it gets fielded, you're looking at minimum 3 years, and that would be the fastest program I've ever seen. So you're looking
Yeah.
at 5
Wow.
years, and just think about computers. Think about, right? I don't even know what version iPhone they're up to now because I'm an Android guy. But let's just say the iPhone 14, right? 5 years ago, what iPhone were you at, right? So if you have a 5-year-old piece of technology, you're moving slow, and
Yeah.
it's the same problem that large corporations have, but this is the largest corporation in the entire world. It's the U.S. government.
No, definitely, that makes perfect sense to me. Yeah. So my next question is usually kind of asking about who's your ideal client and what are some of the outcomes they can expect from working with you. Obviously, a DoD is one of your main clients, but is there, anything else? Or you mentioned a little bit of commercial work as well.
Yeah, everything we build is dual use. I have a private sector background. I grew up in the tech industry in New York City. I've only been in Orlando the last 3 years.
Okay.
So, yeah, and I came from tech, specifically consumer analytics, right? Designing predictive buying analytics so that we can predict what consumers are going to purchase based on previous purchases using anonymized data. So I did that in the private sector, and before that, it was professional sports, which also had the marketing aspect, which is how the intersection there occurred.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of overlap. Coming from that industry, I have a background in commercialization, so that's one of our strengths. It's what we focus on, is dual-use technologies that the Department of Defense needs, that also universities, researchers, particularly around space exploration, future commercialization of space travel. We build technologies that can be utilized both in defense and in private sector. So a great example would be like foreign space launch detection or orbital object tracking systems. And that's really important when you're putting people on a space shuttle and launching them into outer space.
Sure. That does sound important. So what makes you and your company unique in how you provide those services for your clients?
We're not traditional defense contractors. We're not traditional engineers. Everyone on my team, all of our talent is really software-focused technology innovators.
Okay.
These are guys who would be in the private sector building consumer apps. And what we're doing is taking that Silicon Valley and New York City business expertise, and we're bringing it to the Defense Department and making it available to the U.S. government. Right. So it's a different level. Not to say that there aren't extremely qualified people in Department of Defense and in engineering fields, but consumer tech and traditional, what we would call hardware engineering, they're very different trains of thought. One comes from an academia, and the other side is your Mark Zuckerbergs, your college dropout, move fast and break things type of people. And it gives us a significant differentiator in the Department of Defense for sure.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, I like that, the non-traditional. Yeah, that's awesome. So where do you see your industry going in the next 5 to 10 years, and how are you staying on top of that? I can imagine, as much as technology is advancing at a high speed, and you already mentioned the two letters that always come up when I ask this question, A and I. So where are things headed?
It's exploding. Artificial intelligence is absolutely going to be at the forefront. It removes a lot of the layers. Everything that makes the DoD or a large corporation slow, artificial intelligence removes all of it. The AI models are getting better and better. Not even month over month, but week over week. If you're building artificial intelligence technology today, you are multiple generations beyond what was happening just before the new year. It's moving. It's moving
Yeah.
quite literally at the speed of light. I don't think. I think anybody who doesn't work in that field or isn't really in tune with what's happening with artificial intelligence needs to understand that this is significantly more profound than the invention of the internet for humanity. It will be that. Like, it's that. We haven't seen it yet in application. We've seen
Right.
it in ideas, but
Yeah.
it takes time for that application to take place. Over the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to see it. I mean, this is more influential than the invention of the smartphone. So that is definitely leading the race. Second to that is drone technology, and the reason being, well, there's two primary reasons. Drone technology was already kind of the low cost cusp of air power, if you will, right? We've seen that in Ukraine with the Ukrainian-Russian war.
Yep.
Ukrainians were taking $500 Chinese manufactured DJI drones that they could buy on Alibaba.com, right? And, turning them essentially into small smart weapons, okay? So even though Ukraine did not have an air force like, let's say, the United States during Desert Storm, right, where we own the skies, right? And laser-guided weapons were used for the first time during Desert Storm. A laser-guided weapon is going to cost even today, $70, $80, $90,000 is probably the least expensive laser-guided weapon that there is per unit, right? We're talking about the Ukrainians took $500 drones off of AliExpress, and now they have essentially laser-guided weapons, right, on the front line with no support required for aircraft. So drones have already been moving in that direction very, very rapidly. But now take artificial intelligence and apply that to the drones, and you quite literally have Terminator. We have devices that can identify, track, and act on their own, according to guidelines that they've been trained on. It's very... The next 10 years is going to be very, very, very crazy. It's going to... the transformation... I mean, the transformation of not just warfare technology, but general technology overall.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's a very interesting and exciting time for sure. For sure. So this is more of kind of a personal interest question for me. Like you said, I was in the Navy for a long time. And I saw that one of the sort of applications of your work is like VR simulation and that kind of thing. So I've been in a lot of ship simulators over the years, and I know that there's starting to be some opportunity to do that in a VR type of setting. So I'm just curious, any other of, what are some of the applications that you're offering to Department of Defense? I know you do a lot of work with Air Force and Navy.
Sure. Actually, one of our most promising and exciting products in that space is actually a research project that we teamed with the University of Central Florida on. It's a VR novel authoring tool that is used to treat patients with PTSD using exposure therapy. It's both artificial intelligence and virtual reality combined. Essentially, the clinicians are able to derive a trauma narrative from a patient. That trauma narrative is fed to an artificial intelligence which extracts the important data points and generates a virtual reality scene of what the patient has described in real time. And they can quite literally put on the headset and then walk through that memory visually in the office with the clinician in real time. And they're able to treat them. Yeah, they're able to treat them for PTSD with that. And it's very interesting and promising technology. Hopefully it's getting close to release too, right? We've been working on it for a little bit, and I think it's getting close to a release date, which is exciting. But again, also in the DoD, I mean, we're seeing virtual reality as the primary way to train now, right? We used to build $20 million simulators. Well, for a $200,000 piece of software, we can now put you in a photorealistic environment exactly like the vessel that you're going to be on with exactly the same tools.
Yeah.
And next week, if there's an update, we can just change all that too.
It's really amazing. I remember the first time I went into a simulator that was kind of, it still wasn't 360, but you had more, you weren't just looking, out front. You had a little bit more to, but to be in a completely 360 immersed environment and able to practice some of the skills that we need to be proficient at, that's an amazing tool, a learning tool for our young officers going out to drive ships. So that's amazing. Yeah. And the PTSD treatment, so I so hope that is extremely successful. I have a lot of friends that struggle with that, and I would love to see some breakthroughs in treatment. And that sounds like it's potentially going to be one. So
we're pursuing some Department of Defense initiatives in that space. The Air Force has expressed interest in that type of technology. We've had some discussions with naval air warfare. So I think drone operators, not talking about the little drones, right? We're pivoting from the Ukrainian drones. We're talking about the large, the MQ-9s, right? The really large drones. I think drone operators are probably the most pronounced. They have the most pronounced need for it, right? Because for them, they're dealing with frontline combat, but not leaving their homes. So
exactly.
the stark polarization of their day, right? From frontline, just as example is like Afghanistan, right? As an example, frontline Afghanistan until 4 p.m. and then they go home and they play with their kids in their front yard, right? Like the stark polarization is. I'm not a clinician, but from what I've read, it leads to the triggering of PTSD.
It's a different type of moral injury.
Yes.
And it's something that's difficult to prepare someone for. Yeah. I talked through a case study around that issue. I was teaching an ethics and moral reasoning class at the Naval Academy, trying to prepare these future officers for some of the issues they're going to be challenged with when they get out into the fleet. And we talked about that very topic. And there's a movie about it as well. I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head. Eye in the Sky, maybe something like that. There's multiple movies about drone pilots and some of the challenges that have come from that. So yeah, that's again just very very worthy efforts to help folks that are dealing with a lot of challenges.
So the technology that not just we are working on, there are other companies, right? There's probably about 50 or 100 of us all kind of pushing in the same direction, right? I'm a member of the U.S. National Drone Association. There are a bunch of cohort companies involved with that. We're hosting the drone games in Florida for 2025, the U.S. drone games. Drone Wars, I believe was the correct name. We all believe kind of the same thing, right? It's a combination of increasing efficiency, right? Protecting the frontline soldier more by creating these automations, but at the same time, also it adds a lot more protection from civilian and blue on blue, right? It protects from accidents.
Yeah.
When you have these people make mistakes, computers make mistakes too, but at a much, much lower rate than people. So as scary as the whole Terminator thing sounds, it's going to decrease the amount of civilian casualties. It's going to decrease the amount of accidental friendly fire incidents, right? The Pat Tillman incidents, that's going to go away. Not 100%. You can't ever reduce it 100%, but I mean, what would you give to save one, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So I think that the technology has multiple use cases. It's terrifying, but everything new is terrifying. Tanks were terrifying during World War I.
Sure, yeah.
Right?
That's the nature of progress, right?
everything new is scary. Your supercomputers in your pocket were terrifying when they came out. Right?
I'm still a little terrified by that, but I have a teenager.
TikTok scares the shit out of me.
All right. So let me shift a little bit and ask you kind of a more personal question. What would you say is the biggest failure or challenge that you've experienced on your journey, and how has that helped shape how you do business?
It's my journey. I mean, I've been building and selling companies for a decade and a half, so it's a kind of a trick question. In this business, I feel like learning the defense industry was the hardest part. From what I understand, not a lot of outsiders make it in. So everyone is, all of my friends now that I have in that space are like, hey man, you're one of the very few that's ever kind of came in and stuck by and been here.
Yeah.
So I think making it across that chasm or that valley of death between having an idea and seeing it implemented within the Department of Defense which is something every DoD startup struggles with, especially even ones that start natively within the DoD. Right? They get out of the military, they understand the business, they get into it, and they still can't make it across that valley of death.
Yeah.
Coming in as an outsider, from what I've heard, is exceedingly rare. So that was probably the biggest challenge for us in my current venture with TerraSynth. And now, we've got a couple other projects underway, some joint ventures that I can't talk about yet that are very exciting. We'll be
I'll keep
press
my eye out.
releasing that. Yes, big ones, very big ones.
Cool.
Because now I'm bringing all my Silicon Valley and New York friends in.
Awesome.
And then career-wise, it's just learning how to get in, right? Learning that it's not transactional. Learning that it's about building together, not being with your partners, but also with your customers, right? I think when you start out in business, particularly technology, who are mostly introverts, you could tell I'm not, but most technologists are introverts. They struggle with understanding that it's not business at a high level is not transactional. At a low level, it's transactional. But if you want to exceed, $10 million a year, $20 million a year, you're not running a transactional business. You're creating value for your customers, and you're doing it together, right? You're not necessarily even transacting money. You're just creating value, and then money is the byproduct of that value, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah. And so I'm sure you've, along the way, you've faced some setbacks, some challenges, whether it's, just figuring out how to break in, how to get across that chasm, like you said. How have you kind of kept your team or yourself, motivated to persist, to keep going?
If you don't absolutely love what you're doing and are not absolutely passionate about the end result, if you are doing it to get paid, you are doing the wrong thing. Right? I say all the time, and I tell my wife this all the time, right? I would do this for free. I don't need to get paid to do this. I would do this for free. For me, it's about the impact, the mission, and the challenge, right? If I just wanted to make money, I'd probably go get a good job and just invest, right? That'd probably be the best, right? The starting businesses is a gamble, right? It's actually one of the highest risk things you can do. The reward is not just monetary. Don't get me wrong. The money's good, but
of course,
the reward is impact. And if you're not completely obsessed with impact, you're not going to be able to do it because you're going to struggle. You're going to be sued, right? You're going to be. If you haven't had a lawsuit, you haven't been in business. That's just how it works. So you're going to be sued. You're going to be beat up. You're going to have down years. You're going to lose, and every single person that I've ever met who's built something big has done it right after something disastrous has come that was either going to make or break them. They were either going to be out on the streets, done, right, finished, or they were going to get through it, and when they got through it, they were going to add $400 million to their revenue for this year. There's no in between. Yeah. It's extremely polarizing.
Yeah, really figuring out how to use those challenges and those lessons learned to do better, next time, and to keep things moving in the right direction and capitalizing on those experiences. Because
what you got to think about, what type of problem could drive you into bankruptcy? It's got to be a big problem, right?
Right.
Well, if you solve a big problem, what does that create? It creates big revenue. You're solving a big problem. You have that has great value. Well, great value is high revenue. That's what that is. Money is just used to measure value. That's all it is. Yeah. So if you're able to solve that huge problem that's big enough to put you into bankruptcy, then you're creating a ton of value, and that value creation is what generates revenue for the business.
Yeah. Well, I wrote down what you said. Reward is impact, because I like that. I like that mindset. That's awesome.
Okay. I appreciate that.
All right. So
Your bills, they won't care about that.
that's
So
true.
you should. I'm not saying go all in. I'm saying you should have a baseline. Just.
No, I got you. I've got a pension from the military, so I don't have to worry about it quite as much.
That's
But
good. Your baseline, as long as your base, right? So we joke about this. One of my good friends, Lane Campbell is his name. Longtime futurist. I mean, he's involved in everything. Works on some of the biggest deals in the world, not just nationwide. And we joke all the time that the great thing about entrepreneurship, and we've both been lifetime entrepreneurs. Never had a W-2, right? Never had a real job. The baseline for us is zero. Like that's the baseline. Like the bottom is zero, and the top there's no cap, right? Most people getting into entrepreneurship that are coming from like a traditional corporate background, like they're used to having a baseline, you know, whatever their monthly expense, whatever, $4,000 a month is like, that's the minimum they need to make. Like for us, it's zero. It's nothing. You know?
now that's terrifying to me for sure.
Well, that's what makes the game fun.
Yeah, and it takes the right person to be able to walk out onto that ledge and do that. So I admire that about you and a lot of others that are doing that type of work. Groundbreaking. Bringing new things and introducing technologies, and that's all amazing. But it's not for everyone, right? It's that level of risk is challenging for some people. I had pretty good job security for a long time, being in the military. As long as you do your job well, you're pretty much guaranteed that salary is going to continue every month. But it's different when you're doing the kinds of things that you're doing and that you've done. So yeah,
it takes a certain level of obsession, and the obsession with the reward, right, or with which is the impact, right?
Right.
That's what keeps you going. You're not thinking about money. If you, like I said, any sane person, if you thought about money, you wouldn't do it.
Yeah. No,
because the chances are it's not going to work.
I gotcha. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. Okay, so what is your next area of growth, whether it's for you or your business? What's next for you?
That's tough. I mean, I feel like people with that obsessive personality type, right, myself, we're always looking to do new things, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I got into racing. I started winning. Right? You're just looking for, again, there's just an obsession with learning something, figuring something out. Mm-hmm. So on a personal level, I'm just always looking for the next big rush, the next, the next thing that you shouldn't be able to do, right? Like you shouldn't be able to go out and do this, right? It's not for normal people. Well, then I need to do that. I need to figure out how they do it, right? So on a personal level, I'm just always looking for something extreme, exciting that most people aren't able to do, and I'm like, I want to try to do that and learn what sets those people apart, right? That's how I got into racing. Formula cars. This particular trophy is a karting trophy, but that's the beginning of Formula Car. And I've done some Formula Car racing too, which is fun. On a business level, there's a lot of exciting things going on. I think we're seeing a massive transformation of the application of technology in the defense acquisition space. The way that they acquire technology is changing, and the pace that they need to acquire it is changing, and they finally are making that transformation. So I think there's going to be enormous growth in that sector. So we're betting heavily on that. I'm involved in a couple of other groundbreaking technology projects. Some really exciting stuff that I can't, again, speak about, but I'll tell you there's like 4 projects. So not just like 1 or 2 things. There are a few things. And as I've gotten more mature in my career as an investor and as an entrepreneur, I feel that I've been able to more accurately and better identify the signals as to what will lead to success, because now I've seen it a number of times, right? Mm-hmm. You're still going to lose more times than you win, so you have to go into it with that thought process. But I feel like I've gotten to a space where I can pick teams and I can help them to discover either distribution or efficiency, which are the 2 most valuable things in business. Money's actually not important. It's just you use capital to get either efficiency, which is intellectual property, or distribution, which is sales. Without those two things, you don't have a business. So those are the two most important things, and money's not always required. If you have both of those things, you don't need money to do it. So I feel like I've gotten better at picking teams, helping them identify distribution or efficiency, and then kind of guiding them in that direction, which requires less capital outlay and creates more value. So you the byproduct of that is you make significantly more money with significantly smaller investments. So that's kind of opened up the field for me in terms of different projects that I can invest in, different technologies. Everything that I'm working on is technology driven. I think all of it is technology driven. Every single project. I'm trying to think through like each one. They're all technology driven. It's all innovative technology. What we're doing is we're trying to see 12 months around the corner as to like what's going to happen, right?
Right.
Best way to put it is when you're probably about my age. I'm going to date myself. The iPod Touch came out, which was predates the iPhone, right? We remember when Steve Jobs.
I had a Touch. Yep.
Yeah, an iPod Touch. Okay.
Oh yeah.
So when the iPod Touch came out, I think within a month of getting it, I think everyone kind of saw, okay, the phone is next. Like, there's no way that this doesn't become a phone. This is a phone in my hand, right? And it even had Wi-Fi, right? So, like, you had internet on your iPod Touch as long as you had Wi-Fi. I think the next obvious move, especially at that time, BlackBerry was the big business phone.
I had one of those, yep.
BlackBerry was selling data, right? They had switched off of minutes. It was no longer minutes driven. Now you were buying data plans. I think it was it might not have been obvious at the time. Hindsight's 20/20, so it's very obvious today to everyone that we were shifting to a smartphone era, right? Which was 12 months away. If you can see that 12 months away, if you could see that smartphone was the next thing, you could have launched the Samsung S series, right? Like, you have an opportunity to be at the beginning of the convergence of a new era, right? Yeah. So that's what we're looking for, and that's why I think everything is technology driven that we're investing in right now, is because we're trying to we want to see 12 months ahead and maybe act 6 months ahead. Was that a good answer? I know it was long.
Yeah, no.
I apologize.
It's a great answer. It's a great answer. I mean, it really sounds like you're already having impact, and there's more to come too, which is great. So
a lot of civic stuff too. We're working on civic projects, things that, right, on the defense side, you understand, like, there's implications. National defense is required. Politically, people stand one way or another. That's irrelevant, right? What we do is for the safety of Americans. It's not for the offensive action, right? But in addition to investing in defense technology, we want things that have an impact, right? On the civic side, the PTSD, which is it's actually the majority of that is sexual assault victims. So it has nothing to do with warfare. My wife is working on a lot of civic investment we're doing kidney disease education projects, NASA projects, a lot of like national health, right? National Institutes of Health projects. We're working on very civic, give back to the community type of projects. I think those are really important too, to help build the infrastructure of America as well as the national defense of that infrastructure.
Yeah. Well, as a veteran and a retired naval officer, I definitely appreciate all the work that you're doing in those areas. So
thank you for your service.
Thanks. All right, last question. Let us know, how can folks contact you to maybe work with you?
This is a tough one. We only do business by referral.
Okay.
Probably should have said that before our call. We only do business by referral.
Okay.
But there's an opportunity to learn about the technologies on our website, terrasynth.com, terasynth.com. We post white papers all the time, so obviously there are certain things that we don't post, right? There's lots of projects that we work on that we can't post about, but the things that we can post about, the things that can be public knowledge, we post a lot of white papers, articles, so if you're really technical, you can read those. And more importantly, we discussed it earlier, we have a podcast, and that podcast is it's like a macro level breakdown for a normal person to be able to understand some of the technologies that we work on. And it does a pretty good job of breaking it down and explaining it and making it very consumable.
That sounds like the podcast I need to listen to, because I need the macro level.
Go to our website, and there's some exciting stuff on there about like electromagnetic spectrum, which sounds intimidating, but once you listen to the podcast, you're like, oh, this is pretty cool. We're living in Star Wars. This is wild.
Awesome. All right, Allie. Well, thank you so much for talking with me today. It's been really interesting hearing about some of the things you're working on, and I wish you the best of luck as you continue on your journey.
Absolutely, Marisa. It was a pleasure to meet you, and thank you for having me on the show.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Leader's Edge Hot Take series. I hope you found today's insight meaningful, valuable, and that you're ready to put them into action. Now, if you enjoyed the episode and want to keep improving your leaderships, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. I post new content every week, packed with strategies, tips, and real-life examples to help you lead with impact. Now remember, great leadership isn't just about guiding others, it's about continuously growing yourself. If you'd like to be considered as a guest for upcoming episodes, please go to 5eaglesleadership.com/interview to apply today. Keep pushing, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next episode. Be awesome.